Hello everybody. Today we will start Unit 10, which is entitled Science and Progress. And in this unit we will describe a process. Still we are talking about task 1 because you remember at the beginning we said that we have different types of writing which come under task 1. We started with the graphs, the bar chart, the pie chart, the line graph. Then we move to tables, then to diagrams. And the last one, which is flowchart, are almost the same because they describe a process. So this is lesson 1 of Unit 10. Before we start, please keep your books next to you because we are going to do some tasks in the books. Now let's see page 102 in your books. On the top left corner, of page 102, if you see under exam focus task 1, there is a box. Okay, look at the main points there. The first one, summarize a process, and we mentioned this in the beginning. We said that we are going to describe a process, and look at bullet number 3. Use the passive to describe a process. So here, this is very important. When we describe a process, we have to use the passive form. And since we are talking about describing a process, we are going to use the present passive. And the last bullet, if you look at that bullet, it says use sequencing words. What are sequencing words here? I think you are familiar with them. Sequencing words like first, second, firstly, secondly, thirdly, last, next, after that. These words and phrases are called sequencing words. So here, as we said, we have to use the passive to describe a process, and in specific, we have to use the present passive because it is description. And the other one to use sequencing words. Let's look at task 2 on the same page. Task 2 says, look at the sentences about the invisibility cover. Complete them with the passive of the verb in brackets. And of course, the first sentence is done for you as an example. Let's look at the diagram in the book. Look at the diagram in your books, which is in the middle of the page. We have a camera, if you can see that, the camera behind the car model. This is a camera. And the camera is videoing a building. All right. And the image or the video goes from the camera to a computer. You follow the arrows, okay? Follow the arrows from the camera. The first arrow goes to the computer. And the image is processed in the computer. Then the computer sends the image after processing it to a projector. You see, look at the arrow where it goes. From the projector itself presents the image on the car. And then the man which stands behind the projector can see the image. You see the arrows? Yeah. So here we have a process. We have a process which starts from, let's say, step number 1, which is taking an image by the camera. Then the image, this is step 2, goes from the camera to the computer, and in the computer it is processed, and then we have the next step from the computer to the projector and so on. So as you can see, we have steps, and each step comes after another. So there is a sequence, one after another. There is a sequence. That's why we have to use sequencing words like first, second, third, after that, etc. Okay. So here the task says we have to complete the sentences with the passive, and as I said earlier, we have to use the present passive. What is the present passive? If you look at the green color here, the words in green, the present passive, we have am, is, and are, plus the past participle of the verb. Okay. Now, let's look at the example first in your books. Look at the example. The image is, and between brackets, reflect of, this is the verb, the cover. We have to use the passive now. What is the passive of reflect? It is reflected. So this is the past participle of the verb. It becomes reflected of. Okay. Now, what is the present, the first part of the present passive, which is the verb to be in the present form? Because again, if you look at the screen, the auxiliary verbs used, am, is, are the present forms of the verb to be. Okay, so what is the verb to be used here? We have to look at the noun before it. The noun is what? Image. Image, it is singular. Singular, so we use is here. Okay, third person singular, so we use is. So the image is reflected of the cover. Now, what about the next sentence? The image, and we have to use process by a computer. So again, image is singular, and so we have to use is, and the past participle of process is what? Processed with ed. So the sentence becomes the image is processed by a computer. So this is the answer. So here, what do you need to know? You need to know the present form of the verbs of to be, which are am, is, and are. These three, you have to know them. Then the past participle of any verb. All right? Whether the verb is regular or irregular, you need to know this. And I think you have studied the passive in the previous trimester. Now, before looking at the other answers of the following sentences, please stop the video and try to do the sentences yourselves first. After that, you go and continue with the video and check your answers. Now, to check your answers, you will see the answers like this. See becomes is seen, because still we are talking about the image is, and the past participle of see is seen. Then we have is sent, because send here we have, it is irregular, and see also is irregular. So sent is the past participle. Then we have is projected, and the last sentence is recorded. So these are the answers. Now, let's see task 5. Task 5 says which 5, look at your books, which 5 words or phrases can be used to complete the sentence below. So here we have in the box, we have a number of words or phrases. We need to choose 5 of these, and 5 of these can be used to complete the following sentence. So the words that we have in the box are next, then, firstly, now, lastly, after that, meanwhile, subsequently, secondly, and. So these are the sequencing words, the ones we mentioned at the beginning. These are called sequencing words. Now the sentence which is below the box says a video image is recorded. This is one sentence and one step. The other step in the other sentence, we have a blank, and then the image is sent to a computer. Now we need to use a word here, one of the sequencing words from the box which fits here. Now, is it possible to say lastly? I don't think so. You know why? Because we still have more steps to go. It's not the last one. So here you have to choose the correct sequencing words, all right? And 5 of the ones given in the box fit to be here. Again, I'm not going to give you the answer. Now you stop the video, you try yourselves, to answer the sentence here, and then later you come and check your answers. Now, to check your answers, you can see the possible words, the 5 possible words. A video image is recorded, and the words that could be used now, or next, or after that, or secondly, or subsequently. So one of these could be put here. Now the image is sent to a computer, or we can say next the image is sent, or we can say after that the image is sent, or we can say secondly the image is sent, etc. Okay, so these are the 5 possible words. Now let's see an example on the next slide. It says here, the process of making leather goods. We want to look at a diagram which, let's say, represents the process of making leather, but in the form of a diagram. Okay, not sentences. Look at this one. So here we have this diagram which describes making leather goods, but not in sentences, in the form of a diagram. You want to transfer this, or transform, let's say, transform this diagram into sentences. All right? We want to learn how to do that. First of all, if you remember at the beginning, when we talked about graphs, task 1 in general, we said that all the types almost follow the same pattern, the same way of writing, except for a few different things here and there. So here we want to start writing the, let's say, the introduction. We have to mention the name of this diagram, just like we used to do. Earlier, we used to say the bar chart shows, and then we continue. Here, what can we say? The diagram shows, and then continue. Okay? So let's see how we can write a description of this process. So as you can see, this is the introduction. And by the way, this is a simple piece of writing. Maybe we can have another example of a better quality piece of writing. So it says the diagram. So here we have to give the name of the diagram. The diagram. In general, there are diagrams called diagrams. So the diagram illustrates the verb here. We use the verb. And then we take elements information from the diagram. What does it represent? How animal skin is processed in order to produce a range of leather items such as etc. So here you can let's say take the elements. You can look at the diagram and try to gather information from here and there and put it in the first sentence to describe the whole thing that is happening in the diagram. And look at the phrase in blue, is processed. So here this is the passive. We said that we are going to use the present passive. So how the animal skin is processed. All right. All right. In order to produce a range of leather items such as shoes, handbags, and toys, we can maybe say something different from this. We can say how animal skin is processed in order to produce leather goods. That's it. Leather goods, just like given in the instructions of the question. Or what are the leather goods here? They are given here in this sentence. Leather items or goods such as shoes, handbags, and toys. Right? Okay, this is the introductory sentence. Now, after that, we learned that we need to give a general idea. And we have to start the general idea with a phrase. And this is the phrase in general. In general, and then we have to choose a general idea. Producing leather goods from animal skin is a time-consuming process. It takes time to produce these things. So this is something general. I'm not talking about one specific step, all right? I'm talking about the whole process in general. Then let's move to the body, see how we can write the body. The animal skin is dried. And as I said at the beginning, this is a simple piece of writing. We will look at another one where maybe it is better than this one, using phrases and ideas are put in different ways, okay? But this serves the purpose actually. It gives a description. Yeah. So the animal skin is dried. Now here we have to take the steps one by one, or maybe sometimes we can put two steps together and put them in one sentence. It depends on the language you use. So the first one, the animal skin is dried. Then, you see this word? Sequencing word. Then it is taken to a factory. And you have to compare what I'm talking about here to the diagram. This is the second step. Then it is taken to a factory. Instead of then, we can say next or second. So any sequencing word which fits here, you can use. Now, the next one. In the factory, it is washed in water and lime, then soaked in lime and flattened. See, here he puts three maybe steps together. Washing in water and lime, then soaked in lime, then flattened and submerged in tannin. Four steps together in one sentence. But if you find it difficult for you to put these, let's say, steps in one sentence, so you can divide them into two sentences, or even you can talk about each step by itself in one sentence. All right. After that, it is polished and taken to another factory. Here, two steps together: polished and taken to another factory. And I want you to focus on the verbs used. All of them are used in the passive. Okay, is washed, is dried, is taken. Huh? And but here there is something important. If you use two steps in one sentence, you use the verb to be with the first verb, but the other verbs you do not use the verb to be. Look at sentence 3 in the factory, starting in the factory, second line of the body paragraph. Okay, in the factory it is washed. Here we use is washed because this is the first verb. But if you go on, in water and lime, then soaked. See, here we are not using is again. We do not say is soaked. Why? Because this is the same sentence. We are talking about the same sentence. But if you put a full stop after water, for example, if you say in the factory it is washed in water and lime, and you put a full stop, then you start the next sentence, you say then it is soaked. Here you use is. But if you talk about more than one step in the same sentence, you use the verb to be with the first verb and the remaining verbs without the verb to be. Okay? And this is clear here in this sentence. So again, let's go back to sentence 3, starting in the factory. In the factory, it is washed. So here we say is washed in water and lime. Then soaked, only soaked, not is soaked in lime. And flattened, not is flattened. And submerged, not is submerged. You see? Because all of these are in the same sentence. Now look at the following sentence again. We said that in this sentence we have two steps. After that, it is polished. It is polished. Here he uses is because polished is the first verb in this sentence. And taken. You see, we do not say and is taken. And taken to another factory. The last sentence, in the factory it is turned. It is turned. This is a new sentence. Into leather goods. So this is a simple body paragraph talking about the steps. Now the conclusion, again the same thing, you see, all in all, in brief, in sum, etc. If you look at the way we are writing here, describing the diagram, it is the same that we used in describing the other graphs, right? So all in all, the process, and here we have to give a general idea, the process of making leather goods from animal skin is not a simple process. This is general. We are not talking about a specific step. All right. Now we said that we are going to talk about a better piece of writing. Again, describing the same diagram about the process of producing leather goods. Now here, this is the introduction. The diagram illustrates how animal skin is processed in order to produce a range of leather. This is the same. The introduction is the same here. All right. But when it comes to the body paragraphs, first of all, we have two paragraphs. All right. Let's talk about the first one. In the initial stages of the paragraph, sorry, of the process, so in the initial stages, the beginning stages, okay, of the process, the skin is dried. See, that's why I told you this is a better piece of writing. He is using different language. First of all, he started with the phrase. Look at the phrase at the beginning. In the initial stages. If you remember in the previous piece of writing, there was no phrase. So here we use a phrase, then the skin is air dried. There he said dried without air dried. Okay. But here it is clearer. Why? Because if you look at the diagram, you can see that the leather is hanged on something in the air. So that's why he said is air dried before being loaded. You see the language before. You again, before can be used as sequencing here. Being loaded onto trucks and taken. You see, again, he is not using is. See, as we talked about earlier. And taken to a nearby factory where it undergoes 2 chemical treatments to clean and soften it. And here, when he talks about the 2 chemical treatments, if you remember when he said washed in water and lime and soaked in lime, yeah, these are the 2 steps. And he is mentioning them here. Firstly, it is washed. Firstly, why firstly? Because he's talking about the 2 steps he mentioned in the previous sentence. So firstly, it is washed with a mixture of water and lime, and then it is soaked. Why did he use is here? And then it is so because he is using then, the sequencing word, and it is soaked in concentrated or pure lime and pushed through a rolling machine in order to flatten it, after which it is submerged in a vat of tannin, which is a substance derived from vegetables. This is a little bit maybe difficult for you or complicated way of describing, but this could be a good one. Now, another paragraph here, including the remaining steps. The last stage, because if you remember, he mentioned at the beginning, he said the initial stages, and here he says the last stage involves polishing the leather with a roller to improve its appearance. The pieces are, here why are? Because pieces, we have pieces, okay? And then we use the sequencing word, which is subsequently transported, are transported, this is a passive, by road to a processing factory where they are made into a number of everyday products like footwear and sports items in preparation for shipping. So this is a description, detailed description of the steps of producing leather goods. Now the conclusion. Overall, again, here the phrase, the diagram shows that despite the fact that, see the phrases he is using here? The diagram shows that despite the fact that the process of processing animal skin is done mostly in factories with the help of machinery, it is still lengthy and complex, involving several stages. So again, this is a general idea. He's not talking about one specific step. Okay.